You're listening to the official podcast of the Games Institute at the University of Waterloo. The Games Institute is a research center located at the University of Waterloo, and all of our researchers are doing something with games-related research or interactive technologies. The purpose of this podcast is to invite on some researchers from the Institute and get them talking about the research that they do without the constraints of having to think about word counts or jargon. They just sit down, talk about what they get up to, and share with you some of the important findings. And, of course, we always leave time for our researchers to talk about what games they are playing. I'm Marisa Benjamin. I'm the Research Communications Coordinator for the Games Institute. My job is to figure out what everybody is researching, what the purpose of their research is, and how to get that information out to you, the public.
I am the other co-host for the Games Institute podcast. My name is Tobin Rossico. I am a PhD student at the Games Institute and at the University of Waterloo.
We are joined by Alex Fleck.
Yeah, the laughing voice. Hi.
Alex, we are going to get into the habit of getting people to introduce themselves. So
Okay.
rather than me sit around and tell everyone who you are, do you mind if you say who you are?
Sure. So in terms of the Games Institute, I am a first-year PhD student. I've been around through my master's, and I've been doing a bunch of projects at the Games Institute. I know a lot of people. Chances are, if you've come to the Games Institute looking for help with VR, then I've been the person that helped you. Trying to think of who the audience would be. Anybody. So, hi, friends.
Yeah, students or otherwise, people who
Exactly.
just come off the street looking for VR help.
Maybe
Yeah.
if you send this to your parents or grandparents after, and they can finally know what you do in your program.
Oh, God, no. Yeah. To explain the English part after that would be the difficult thing, I think.
Oh,
If I'm
we're-
like, hey, VR, they're like, oh, I saw that on the TV.
We're going to get there.
All right.
So you started off saying in terms of the Games Institute. What about not in terms of the Games Institute? Who are you?
Oh, I'm a human being who lives in Kitchener. Yeah, it's very specific. Let's get real personal right away on the podcast. I've been living in KW for 7 or 8 years now. I went to school here, all 3 degrees, technically.
At U Waterloo?
Yeah. I like it, I guess. It's a very unique situation as far as scholarship and the things I'm interested in. So the fact that it's been a place where I can sort of do those things and nurture them has been good. I wouldn't have come back if it wasn't that, we'll say.
What are your previous degrees in?
So literature and rhetoric. So at this university, they have streaming in English.
Right.
So there's a literature stream, there's a rhetoric stream, there's a professional writing stream, and then you can combine any sort of combination of those 3. So I did literature and rhetoric.
Excellent.
For those that I guess are outside UW, rhetoric in this case is like ancient rhetoric out of like Aristotle, I guess, ethos, pathos, and logos stuff. But it's more applied, for example, at the Games Institute and the English people that are there through digital media and digital humanities scholarship.
Mm-hmm. So we always like to start off with our guests by asking the same question and then allowing you to kind of take it in a direction that you want to take it.
Oh, okay.
What is your earliest childhood memory of gaming?
My earliest childhood memory of gaming is probably 92 or 3. My mom was a little late on the bandwagon for the Super Nintendo, but she did bring one home one Christmas. And then I proceeded to ruin my eyesight sitting an inch from the TV for the 10 years after that. Super Mario Worlds and Super Mario All-Star, I ended up getting the cart that had both. Lucky kid. And so I played both. And that was my introduction. So very sort of, I don't know, that's probably a 90s baby story. Or
Yeah, that's like
late
the same
80s
story
baby
for me too. So.
Yeah. Sort of standard, played some Mario stuff. I was always like a couple years behind on the console generation, so that was interesting. I got to play games that people didn't always play. They weren't considered the best games at the time. You think about the way games journalism has become more prevalent, I guess. As a kid, you read magazines or whatever, and that's what you had. When I was a kid, anyway. But yeah, so I think that's it. Just being about 5 years old.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you do any tabletop gaming?
So tabletop in terms of like Warhammer, no. In terms of like D&D, yeah. I have a regular D&D game with people at the GI, actually.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
What do you play? What's your character? I'm always fascinated to know what people pick to role play.
I'm a dwarf barbarian.
Excellent.
Oh, cool.
For those what a visual medium podcasting is. I'm like 6'2", so I like to be small. It's kind of interesting.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Small and furious.
Yeah, and furious. I'm about 100 years old, too, so I'm an old dwarf barbarian.
Excellent.
Not by dwarf terms, I guess, but by everyone else's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wear spiked armor. I imagine it's sort of like Mad Max.
Right.
Nobody's drawn my character, but we do have a model that someone 3D printed, which is amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
We need to start doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, why not?
Get more textile in our gaming.
Yeah. I have to roll a new character. Mine died yesterday, and sadly.
Oh, no.
So I was actually thinking a barbarian. Didn't consider dwarf.
So,
Yeah.
no, go ahead, sorry.
I'll probably pick a dragonborn or something bigger
Oh,
because
cool.
I'm not tall.
That would be nice, yeah. I picked barbarian, I think, because newish to D&D, and I was like, that seems like a thing where I understand the mechanics. Like, oh, you're going to hit stuff. I'm not flipping through spell books. I'm not picking a ton of strategy stuff. It's like I know the 3 or 4 things I could do at any given situation. And I do like that. Yeah, it's kind of nice.
All right, enough D&D. What do you research?
I think about this elevator pitch like once a week, so let's see where it's at. Let's see where it's at right now.
You should think about it every day and how do you do it in 30 seconds? How do you do it in a minute, 2
Yeah.
minutes, 5 minutes?
3-minute thesis.
Yeah.
Yep, it's definitely part of the professionalization bit. So I study VR using sort of English critical theory and methodology to understand how media, particularly in VR, bump up against each other. And by media, I mean like just text or video, or I'm considering game mechanics as part of this as well, and other things. So that can all happen in VR. And so what does it mean to have all those things happen, particularly in VR with the headset and the typical perspective and the affordances of that technology? So you have motion controls in your hands, you have a thing on your head. And so the tendency has been that a lot of designers are creating first-person experiences. So I'm thinking about how those things are sort of interrelated, how the design affects the software and sort of vice versa. There's a sort of a culture around what's available on the storefronts. These are all satellite sort of things that I'm interested in.
Interesting. And VR, by the way, stands for virtual reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did this love of VR come from? Like if you grew up as like a Super Nintendo player, was it just like this really novel thing that you were exposed to? And when were you even exposed to it?
So my first exposure to VR actually wasn't very, very long ago. Although I would say that there's a way to trace VR through motion control.
Okay.
And particularly the popularity of the Wii. So there's a theorist, I forget their name actually. Good for the podcast.
It'll be in the show notes.
Yeah. Who suggests that the Wii is essentially VR through a portal.
Interesting.
Because what you have with the direct one-to-one motion controls, and this is actually the Wii Motion Plus, which is a thing that came out after the Wii a little while later, that allowed for more direct stuff. So some people may remember Zelda Skyward Sword.
Right.
It's one of the flagship games for the Wii Motion Plus. But what it did was allowed you to sort of tilt your wrist and have Link tilt the sword.
Right.
And so this is like a way of having your hands in VR, if that makes sense. So I've been thinking of that as a metaphor or a precursor to VR as we know it now, which is completely closed off in the sense that it's a new world.
What exactly did having Link's hand turn while you turned, what did that do for your experience?
Maybe that's not the best example. I can think of, like, Wii bowling was a thing that was like a cultural touchstone for a lot of people. I feel like I read an article once too where they talked about the sales of the Wii and the software that happened afterward, and apparently Wii Sports and Wii Bowling included was like one of the most popular things.
Yeah.
It's like there's so many older people and people that weren't typically gamers who got involved because of that, and just this sort of the directness of taking this thing that we do in sort of real life and imagining it so sort of seamlessly. In terms of the game, that was, I think, an appeal.
That example is more of a touchstone for me because that's kind of more what I used to game. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I remember with bowling feeling as if it was actually my hand, and then watching it play out and feeling like it wasn't my hand because I must have done it much better than it actually turned out. And then I had to adjust myself. So it was this whole transportability thing that made it much more immersive.
Nice. Yeah, this is one of the things in VR scholarship we're talking about. So is there this direct sort of line to physicality through VR? Or is it still just as an abstraction or just as abstracted, and we're just sort of finding our way to that place through literacy? So over time, are we going to realize that VR, it's not really your hand, of course. It's a model of someone else's hand. And you're not throwing the ball. There's no ball. But at the same time, there's some neuroscience scholarship that suggests that there is something in the brain that's happening that sort of convinces you. There's something that's a little more convincing than holding, say, a gamepad in your hand. Although people are completely immersed in that too, in some sense, right? So, yeah, I wonder about the relationship of time. So what's going to happen as a function of time as we get used to VR, as more people use VR, as experiences that are tailored to VR are more prevalent. It's a big part of the research questions I'm looking at, actually. Does that answer? I'm gonna go back to a question.
I'm letting
VR.
that
Why do I
sink
like
in.
VR?
I'm letting that sink in because that gave me a lot of information.
Yeah. So the hardware, there's early 90s and I guess just 90s VR in research and scholarship, which is the one term they have is KVR, and this is VR that was big and expensive and happened in research institutions and at companies. It wasn't something you could have in your home. So one change, at least, is that this sort of technology has become more condensed and you can have it in your house. The PlayStation VR is the most popular iteration right now. And part of the reason is the install base of the PlayStation is like 85 million units or something right now. So even a small percentage of people that have a PlayStation are buying PSVR, and that means that there's way more people than ever had it before.
Wow.
VR in their houses. So whether that becomes like a truly mainstream thing, I know it feels mainstream because there's a lot of media promotion and stuff, but whether that becomes a truly mainstream thing in terms of numbers, it's hard to say.
Yeah, we're seeing all these VR arcades popping up around the city.
Control V.
Yeah, in the city is
That kind of stuff.
Have you two been to that?
Yep.
You enjoy it?
I haven't.
Oh, you haven't been? No.
I don't know if I've like fully been caught up in the wave of VR. I much prefer just like Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
This weekend.
Fair enough.
I'm very caught in the wave of VR.
Okay.
I guess I've never had an experience with VR that's really made me go, whoa, this is like gonna change the way
We
that
should
I
get
play
him in.
games.
You, Alex, you put me into a program that we should get Tobin in.
Okay.
What was it?
You're gonna have to remember what it is. I
It was
so
the
many
whale.
people.
It was the whale. So we were
Oh, okay,
underwater,
yeah.
and then all of a sudden,
I've been there, yeah. So I have done a lot of VR, but none of it has been kind
Grabbing
of
you.
mind blowing. The whale though, like I almost had a panic attack because I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
fear of deep seas and that kind of stuff. I guess there's never been a game yet that's interested me enough. Like I played Resident Evil 7 VR, had a terrible headache afterwards. And then I watched some friends play like Skyrim and stuff, and I think the switch from using your thumbs and stuff to having to physically move is kind of relearning gaming, and that takes me out of it.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like the literacy that you have with gaming is already sort of built up, and you can't
They're trying to rewrite it.
escape it.
Because I found it so weird that even in Resident Evil, when you go to shoot, you have to like move your head.
Yeah.
And that felt really kind of unnatural because you don't aim a gun with your head, you aim it with your hands.
And in real life, when you aim a gun, you always just move your torso. Like
Exactly.
in games, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's funny.
I wonder if the
interesting.
things that are barriers to you now will eventually become reasons why you love VR. Because if it's all about body synchronicity while you're shooting a gun, that should, I would think, be something that makes it more real. Maybe you know more than...
So my experience so far is and maybe this is my game literacy sort of like creating white noise or something, but Super Hot VR is probably the most synchronous, I think is the word to use. That's a good way to put it. Synchronous bodily experience that I've had. And part of the reason I think that works is, for those that don't know, Super Hot VR, when you move, everything else moves. So it's a series of like shooting first-person style puzzles, essentially, where you have like a room happen and there's a bunch of enemies and they come at you. But the thing is, they don't move until you do it all. And so the control over basically time, I guess you could say, means that for me, for example, I never got nauseous. It wasn't the case of the environment sort of like gyrating wildly around me, which for a lot of people is a big problem in VR. Resident Evil, to speak to your experience, gave me a huge headache immediately as well. And they actually, in Resident Evil, did a thing that I think was necessary based on their development. So I think it's like 15-degree turns in Resident Evil are turned on by default.
Yeah.
So it's not like one-to-one motion where you move your head and it just sort of moves wherever you want it to. It's like you turn and then a few seconds later it sort of
adjusts.
gyrates
Yeah.
and moves 15 degrees at a time in the direction you turned to end up where you ended up, but slower.
Yeah.
It's just like an acceleration thing maybe, or maybe they figured out just what they're testing internally. I've never looked
Motion
into that.
sickness and stuff.
Does it improve motion sickness that it's a little bit lagged?
It did for me. Again, that's a personal experience. I don't know if anyone's done any studies specifically on Resident Evil 7, but it'd be interested to know, just because that is one of those design things that sort of happens in the world, and then we, as scholars, study it to see if it had any effect. Like, I don't know if they were consulting scientists for that. They may not have been. They just sort of like, hey, this makes it better. Let's put it in. Who knows? Yeah.
I know Multisensory Brain and Cognition Lab, MBC Lab, they are doing work with Superhot, or they did a study on Superhot. Is that when you started playing Superhot? Because I know you do work with them through the VR working group.
True. Yeah. No, we definitely have a relationship through the VR working group. I can't remember if this is something where they were looking at Superhot and then I decided to play, or just the fact that it was popular. 'Cause that's another thing that another role I sort of have in terms of being the VR person or technician, I guess you could call it, at the GI. Not technician in the sense of like I know how VR works, more like I can show people the consoles and the hardware. I'm meant to know a lot of the software. So yeah, no, I picked that Superhot up for that reason. I just can't remember the timing. I mean, it could have been. Their study, though, I don't remember the parameters of that study. Was that the museum experiment one or something else?
I think it might have been...
No, Lone Echo is a museum experiment. I can't remember
It might
what
have been
Superhot is
their
involved in.
experiment in a day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can grab these details and
Sure.
throw it in the description.
Absolutely. Yeah, I enjoy Superhot. That's one I'd recommend to many people, especially if you've had experiences where you've become nauseous. I think that sense of control, it might just be a placebo also, but it's one of those things where I feel like people are better with it. Yeah. Once they figure out that flailing wildly means they will lose at Superhot, because everything happens very fast if they do that.
Interesting.
And do you have other peripherals with Superhot? Like, do you have like the Steam? You have the little triggers. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah,
The
so
Steam Labs. You have the little guns, and PSVR. You sometimes have the.
So this is just
Whatever.
the versions of the controllers that sort of either hold the controller or are a different controller that look
Yeah.
like a gun sort of deal. I don't have any of that for Superhot, no.
No, it's just you're
Using my case, the Vive, HTC Vive
Okay.
controllers. I find because Superhot is on all three platforms, it's actually a really good comparison tool. So if you wanted to know what some of the differences are between them, then that'd be the kind of thing where we could play on every single one. It's like you get used to Superhot on a Vive with the room-based VR experience.
right.
And then you try the Oculus's version of that same room-based experience to see if it feels the same. And the PlayStation VR, the funnel sort of, it's a little more limited in that sense, but also, economically it's a lot cheaper. So it's interesting to compare them that way. It's a good piece of software for that. Yeah.
Why did you come and do your PhD at U Waterloo?
I picked U Waterloo. It kind of sounds like I just was here and then figured out some stuff, and then that's basically it. I figured out what my research interests were here, and that's perhaps unsurprising that there are people here to support that, because they were talking about those things in their classes, and some of the research and collaborations are already around that at the GI through the Critical Media Lab, which is an on-campus English department lab as well, and they deal with makerspace, and part of my other research interests also sort of constellate around that stuff. I have an interest in, I could say generally, I guess, like invisible systems. So how data and infrastructure are sort of made invisible.
Yeah, there's a
by
lot of people
companies
working
and other.
on these.
Yeah, it's a common thread
At
here.
U Waterloo, yeah.
So I guess that group and that network is something that I just wanted to continue with. I know there are other places in the country where you can do that, but I know that also Waterloo is one of the prevalent ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But why do your PhD at all?
Why do a PhD at all? Oh boy,
I know, big questions for early in the morning.
the
We're
deep
recording
cuts. Oh no.
it's still 9 a.m. over here.
I think it's kind of like the simplest answer for me, but I still had research stuff I was interested in. If I had felt that I was sort of done with the academic process and the way that it works, which many people sometimes become that way and they move on and do other stuff, then I would have moved on. But I'm not. I feel like the research is still interesting, Yeah, I'm still enjoying class and the readings and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm first year PhD, by the way, so still in coursework.
Yeah.
So at what point in your academic career did you stumble upon or were exposed to the Games Institute, and what made you say, hey, I want to link up with them and kind of set my flag over there?
Interesting. So as an undergraduate, I'm going to date myself a little bit. I think in 2008, I learned what the Games Institute was, or it wasn't the Games Institute then, but what was it? Neil was teaching a course. Dr. Randall, who's the director of the Games Institute, was teaching a game design course in undergrad in the English department, which I thought was really cool and interesting.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I was there was like a sort of, I don't know, mini renaissance of gaming and enthusiast podcasts at the time.
Yeah.
OneUp.com podcasts and Giant Bomb had just started, I think, at the time or around then.
Yeah.
So the timing of all these things was sort of that I was very much every week like consuming a lot of media about games. And this course came up and I couldn't take it, and I bought the textbook because that's the cool kid I am.
No, that's dedication.
Yeah, it's dedication. And then I just remembered like sort of following like news sort of things that happened over the next few years as I was like out working and doing other stuff about the Games Institute being founded.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you're like
You're
a fan.
Yeah, a stan.
Started outside, yeah.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. I thought that you were poached by Dr. Randall. I thought he came and saw you doing some cool things. I had this whole narrative in my head about how you met.
That's amazing. You thought a lot about that. Nice.
Yeah, because I first met you when you came to teach one of our classes. I took the Harry Potter class in my undergrad with Dr. Randall, and he was unavailable to make it for one of the classes, so you came and taught?
Yeah.
While you were in your master's? Or that might have been...
That was in my master's, yeah.
In your master's. And then we met again in game studies class later when I was doing my master's, and you came to demo Hustle and Flow.
Nice.
Yeah, which we should totally talk about next.
Okay.
But anyway, you were always, for me, the face of the Games Institute. So
cool.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting to know that there was a time that there was the Game Institute before Alex Fleck.
So do you regret being convinced? Like, I convinced you to come, and now you're at the Games Institute, so how do you feel?
I think I told you. Oh, regret being... I didn't hear that first part.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you totally convinced me. I do not... On the record, I do not regret coming. I owe a lot to you. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah.
No, it's one of these things where talking about it is one of the things I'd like to do in any class, that I sort of have a guest lecture or... For a while there, in between my undergrad and master's, I was just sort of like doing TA work and stuff like this too, so I could talk to students. And it was definitely one of those things that I pointed it out to them, because a lot of people still don't know that it's there, even though now it's a core-funded institute and all that stuff. I feel like I'm promoting. I should stop that.
I mean, here's how we can shift it away from just promoting the Games Institute. What it means is that for English students who typically are enclosed in the humanities, it gives them an opportunity to kind of branch out and tap into other disciplines. And these are types of opportunities that you should take wherever you find them, not just with the Games Institute, but if you can link up with other research centers or other organizations on campus,
For sure.
you definitely should, because your degree is more than just your own discipline, I think.
I mean, it should be, and particularly in an environment like UW's where there are so many researchers that are crossing those bounds. Yeah.
You can do so much more outside of it. And even if you're not personally doing it, if you make collaborations, your research can go further, I think. Yeah.
Definitely.
So back to Hustle and Flow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, Hustle and Flow. Okay, I kind of like to do this too, where I give a little bit of what I know about the game.
Give a
and
synopsis?
Then,
Yeah, do it.
And then you jump in and you correct me and you fill in some gaps.
Cool. I can talk about how the project started too, which is fun.
Yes, please. I'd love the history of it and where you're at now.
Okay.
Here's what I know about Hustle and Flow, and this is thinking back to when I played it, and that was over the summer, and Tobin was in my class.
It was around May, I think.
Around May, yeah. Okay, Hustle and Flow is a game that simulates the different stakeholder perspectives around the St. Lawrence water basin. St. Lawrence River water basin? St. Lawrence water basin.
It's I mean, the St. Lawrence River. Yeah, you could say river water basin if you'd like.
Okay. So you play in different rounds. In the first round, you play and you try and just think about the best interests of the water basin. And then in the second round, you play as the role of one of the stakeholders, and you make decisions for your best interest as well as the best interests of the water basin. And you're either assigned to be, I think you had Mohawk was a really interesting stakeholder. There's also an agriculture.
It's transportation, shipping. What else we got? The power companies, or a sort of aggregate of electricity interests, and then tourism and hospitality. So these are people like restaurant owners, fishermen too. We can think of the fishing industry as concerned as part of that stakeholder group. So the stakeholder groups themselves. The first thing I should say too, that the two things you described are actually two separate games as well.
Oh.
So there's a digital version where you are basically having this macro view of the basin, and you get to make decisions and play with the levers.
Oh.
So it's like it's
Oh,
based
you're an
on
omniscient.
yeah. You think of yourself as like it's the ideal situation where you just wanted to see what would happen if you sort of tweak some things
that's
to see
very
what would
cool.
happen. So that part is actually was developed sort of second in some sense. The way the project started, maybe that's the best way. It's a collaboration with McGill University. And their, I think, what is it, water management department there. And so they had reached out to Dr. Randall, and they wanted to do something, and they were interested in the possibilities of simulation and games for understanding or modeling some of the things that are happening there. So the St. Lawrence water situation is basically that there's a part of the St. Lawrence River that crosses a number of boundaries. That's federal in terms of U.S. and Canada, state in terms of, I think, New York, particularly Buffalo, and Quebec/Ontario as well. And so there's the province levels too. So one of the governance problems or challenges is how do you really deal with that? Whose water is it? What is it used for? How do we decide? So there's been a lot of money that's gone into understanding that problem and then making recommendations. And then there's also the potential that a governmental change will mean that those recommendations aren't even listened to. So there's many, many layers of how do we sort of deal with this thing. And so Hustle and Flow, originally what the idea of it was that we try to model some of that complexity. So you could take on the role of a stakeholder. It's a card game. So you have a number of options, and you have basically a set list of scenarios that you go through. And as a group, you have to negotiate for yourself, but also as a group, you have to decide on what happens. So how things get passed. And this was based on some research that we had gotten from the Water Institute, and from talking to them, started the water management group at McGill. And we basically tried to create a system that modeled that complexity so that as a person who's new to that, you could understand it as a kind of educational game in some sense. And then the idea was that it could also scale potentially. So it's like if those scenarios were too simple, then all of a sudden we could collaborate with other people and create new ones that were better. Sort of like an iterative system is the idea, which is how it's sort of become different and changed.
Yeah.
So the macro view thing came about later, and that we wanted a way to juxtapose those two views, because the part of the idea is that you have your individual needs.
Yeah.
And then there's the collective needs. And when you're negotiating for your individual needs, it's a very different perspective than you're thinking about the good of the system as a whole. So juxtaposing those two perspectives was part of it.
Yeah, you really should play both types of games in order to see. Because in a perfect world, yeah, you can just be an omnipresent, omniscient person who can decide what's happening with the water governance. But then in reality, like, there's all of these different stakeholders, and even though they don't want to conflict, a lot of the times they do. They think about the best interests of the basin. What I really like about it is how water governance is so complicated that rather than just explain it, you put people in those roles and you have them negotiate with one another. And I actually played against you, Tobin, in that game. Do you remember?
That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
I remember playing it, but I don't remember like who I was with and stuff. But I remember that it was a very accurate kind of representation of a scenario like that, where before that day, having never thought about a situation that involved those kind of shared interests or conflicting interests at times, it was really effective to have to step into that, deal with it, and then come away thinking, oh man, this is like what people do every day, and we did it for 15 minutes and it was overwhelming because there's so much going on.
And it's easy to villainize the person sitting across from you, but then you play a second time and all of a sudden you are in that role and you realize like you have interests that need to be met as well.
Yeah. Well, this is definitely part of call it what outcomes, I guess. The things that we think would be interesting that people would sort of come away with when they play the game. The ideal playthrough is that you develop these perfect sort of strategies as the macro, the digital version of the game, which is, by the way, we started modding a version of Democracy 3, which is a game that lets you mess with democracy levers. So it's like we were taking out all those democracy policies and putting in water ones and seeing if we could make that simulation work. It's sort of in half-finished form in some sense. Like it's pretty cool, but I don't think it's a complete thing. But that does give you this idea of like a perfect set of strategies. It's like, oh, in a perfect world by myself, which is actually sort of how you'd imagine a stakeholder would be with their group. It's like, oh, they're at home and they're thinking about all the things they want and all the things that they can sort of, justify and rationalize around. And then they show up to the bargaining table, so to speak. And that's not reality. That just doesn't work. So having that sort of, that experience modeled, I think, was the most important thing for me in some sense. Just so people get an idea of coming in with the system in mind and trying to balance those needs, I guess. Yeah, that game was fun.
Yeah. Where would people be able to play it?
So the Games Institute has copies available for sure. The digital version is unavailable as of now. I don't think that's the kind of thing where I could show it to you potentially if somebody wanted to see it. It just didn't get developed past a certain point. It's because of the way funding works in SSHRC grants and stuff like this. Let me think about that. There's also, one of the other sort of developments in that game is that we went to your game studies class. Part of the feedback we got from there is actually a different iteration of the rules now. There's two versions to play. One of them is very, we're describing a game in text, which I never enjoy, but one of them is very quantified and one of them is not. And I think there are two different sort of perspectives that come out of that. So in one sense, you're working together and you have to meet these point totals, and that sort of is how the constraints are created in the game. And then in the second version, which we developed further after talking to your class in particular, is less quantified. It allows for more role-playing, I think, which becomes potentially more interesting, because the one thing we did find is that once people figured out the math of how they could both meet their collective needs and at least do some of their individual needs, then they were just working together. It was like, let's math this and figure that out.
And then it just becomes an optimized...
You need a chaos component too.
Yeah, the unknown for sure. So we tried to inject some of that with the second iteration. So both of those are available as a thing. The Games Institute keeps copies of every project I think that people are working on, books that people have written. Yeah, all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
at least every analog project and digital. But
my hope, my idealistic utopian hope, is that these systems sort of never end. Because it's a card game and you can iterate sort of easily. It's like my hope is that one day, like a water scientist is down and they're like, "This is wrong." Like, cool, write new cards. Yeah, here you go.
As a package, if you could package up that concept, you could apply it to so many different things, because this idea of stakeholders having interests and having those interests conflict with one another and needing to negotiate, that happens everywhere.
Yeah, collective sort of needs versus the individual, definitely. That even that reasoning or the logics of those things, if you're, I think the game does that most. Like, I wouldn't say that it's a very specific hard and fast water simulation. It has scenarios. But I think it's more about creating that mentality, like understanding the one versus the other.
Yeah, through gaming you can. So you have this, formula, let's say, and what you've loaded it with is information. Information that you rightly said could be updated, but you have this gamification of how to simulate that. Now you can just take it and put it in different places. That's what I love about, games for change, games for impact, is it gets you into thinking about things in a way that you never would have access to before.
It's one of the challenges of promoting scholarship like this and trying to get it going, like the research creation angle. It's like that this version of the experience or playing through an experience can be more beneficial than a slideshow, can be more beneficial than anything else. And that's like, for us in this room, I guess, is kind of like a foregone conclusion. But for many people that don't understand necessarily why people are into games, there's like this element of, putting myself in their position sort of walking a mile in someone's shoes and trying to understand the decisions they would have to make is a huge part of that.
I like to think of it as a fourth dimension.
I need to actually look up what happened, but I cited this before in a conference I went to talking about kind of games in the classroom and how games help people just kind of get outside themselves. There's a teacher who brought, actually I think it might have been something we read in game studies, but a teacher brought two copies of Halo. The first one they played on easy, and the second one they set up on Lasso, so Legendary All Skulls on.
Yep.
And they had players play through it, or the students play through it, and it was kind of a lesson of like racial injustices, I guess we could say, right? Okay. So like those who come from like a wealthy, privileged background play life on easy, and then those who don't are playing on this game that, and like the students couldn't even make it through like 1 to 2 minutes of playing on the hardest difficulty of Halo. Yeah. And a lot of students who had never thought about something like that before commented saying like, I never understood what these people go through, and I was able to somewhat glean that information from playing a video game that I've been playing, for 5-6 years or whatever.
Yeah, just taking the metaphorical frame, putting it over. Yeah, that's
exactly.
Interesting.
Because I've seen something like that in visual form, a meme of having people start in different places. There was also that video that went viral where the teacher was telling students take jumps forward if you do this and if you have all of these privileges, and then he starts the race with the finish line there as a simulation. So it's really cool to hear about how you can use games to do that.
Yeah, I do like that as a kind of thought experiment thing. That's cool. Yeah. I also like Halo. So.
All right, we have about 10-ish minutes left.
Okay. Is it a coincidence that you play D&D in your spare time and then you went and developed a game that so heavily depends on role-playing? How does your gaming background feed into your gaming research and vice versa?
That's a great question. In this case, I can't really point to a history of D&D that informed Hustle and Flow particularly because I actually didn't play before.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
We're all such noobs at D&D then.
Yeah. I guess we're all pretty new. It's the last year for you? And
I don't even think I've hit like 9 months yet.
Okay.
No, you must have, because I think I have.
I started in April.
Oh, okay.
Well, maybe that is 9 months from now, but
maybe I'm at 6 months.
But it hasn't been a full year for me.
Okay.
And I mean, I've dove in pretty heavily since starting, so.
Nice. I did play, actually, no. Well, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot. I think I did play some D&D before Hustle and Flow was finished. I just can't remember the sort of development of it. The first game I played was a couple of years ago. With people from the GI again as well, actually, and English students. But yeah, I can't remember how that worked. I'm trying to think. And my interest in the role-playing element, it definitely, I think, feed into each other in the sense that, like, my interest in characters and understanding how roles inform and sort of shape content or shape behavior and help you make choices. It's like... I don't know. The simplest way in D&D is to think about, barbarians have mechanics that others don't, and that's the nature of your choices in D&D. The things you can do, in this case, say in combat, but also the way that sort of shapes character is important. I don't know. Yeah.
The constraints and affordances of the game mechanics change how you play, change how you behave.
Of course, yeah. It's like a content form thing, media studies thing. I think for sure, or they have to. Yeah. So it's a little looser than I think you're expecting, yeah. Any game design methodologies I use that are D&D informed, particularly? No, not right now. Not that I know of, actually.
So what about some other games that you play a lot? Do they end up inspiring the way that you research?
Games that I play a lot inspire the way I research. I've written about games that I play a lot because I feel like, write what you know is a pretty good mantra in some cases. I wrote about Halo 5. In particular, and the kind of microtransactive loops. So how does the microtransaction system work, and how do the other systems sort of guide you that way, or do they guide you that way? I wrote a paper about that for First Person Scholar. That was fun. It was for a course, and then it became a paper for First Person Scholar. That was a couple of years ago. Am I writing about other games that I'm playing right now? I found more that the research has opened up genres of games that I'm not typically playing, actually. So I'm playing a lot of simulation games right now because of an ongoing project. I'm playing State of Decay, which is a zombie base building sort of open world simulation. And it's also about cultivating relationships because you find these survivors in the wasteland and you have to sort of negotiate some of the social things as well.
So you got into that because you were working on it?
Yeah, it's part of an ongoing project in the sense that I'd like to play it to see if there are things we can, steal. things that it does well, that are interesting, mechanics, and the way
things
that it frames
can
things.
Inspire you.
Yeah, steal. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Oops, that was a big one. Sorry.
I was gonna say. So as a barbarian in D&D, you're probably not very charismatic. So
God,
do you
no.
find that games?
-2.
Yes, I think that's what my barbarian has
What
too.
role did you? Never mind. Sorry.
So what was my question now? Do you find that games that have kind of relationship components or more kind of character to character interactions are kind of a nice break, or do you like to play games where you can just walk in and hit stuff and shoot stuff and kind of get satisfaction from that kind of stuff?
So if you think about,
Because I mean, we've talked about Hudson Flow, which is very much interaction, and you need lots of charisma and stuff.
Yeah, no violence in there at all.
Right, but then like State of Decay, if you're still working with other characters, trying to form relationships while still beating up zombies, like what do you think is kind of a good trajectory for games to be looking at to foster each side?
to foster each sides together or separately? Because there's an
either
interest
or.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
both. Okay. I mean, there's genres of games out there that are, I think, doing, the indie scene is doing lots of things as far as, one genre, for example, that's become, we'll say, like more prevalent or popular recently, maybe I don't know, maybe I just noticed it myself, but anyway, visual novels.
I agree with that.
That's become a thing in the last little while. I played Hatoful Boyfriend, which is the pigeon dating simulator. I'm not very good, apparently, at dating simulators, which became
Did I tell you I
prevalent
played
when
Dream Daddy?
I died. Dream Daddy's supposed to be great.
It's excellent.
Yeah. What's another one? Oh God, there was we did one for an FPS podcast. It was Android game. Oh no, it's Korean. I forget the name of it. Oh no.
We can find the
That'll
podcast
also be in the
episode.
show notes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The names of things.
Yeah, seriously.
But it became very interesting to me how these things have their own sort of culture and conventions already.
Right.
So not even just that you're thinking of yourself as being in a relationship to be in these games, but more so that if you don't sort of like go and express your interest with one of the characters very quickly, then actually the game discourages. Like there's conventions there. It becomes very interesting. I don't know if that's a genre-wide thing, but the few I've played, it's like if I'm too sort of waffling, I'm like talking to everybody. I want to know them before I commit to dating them.
Yeah,
Then
it
doesn't-
constrains your ability to behave the way that you normally might. Like if you're seeking out a dating simulator game so that you can model how you would behave in real life and maybe test some things out, well, sorry, you can't, because you have to be automatically more, aggressive about it.
That was interesting for me. I hadn't thought of that. That was really cool. That's not really answering your question. I think those things, as they become more popular, I think there might be just, Persona 5 and its popularity, or the Persona series, I think, is another way that these things are sort of combined together, and the way they can sort of feed into each other. I think that's a really cool model for, although people game that too, so they'll just game the relationship to get the benefits from the dungeon crawling. Persona is an RPG where you have a sort of life simulation that feeds into your dungeon crawling and killing stuff simulation. And the way those things cross is sort of as a direct stat or statistical benefit. With a combination of things, of course, it's more complicated than that. But I think those games being popular says something about the way those two things can be together. That being said, the top of my Steam played list right now is Rocket League and Dead Cells.
Oh, Rocket
So
League is
those
so
are-
fun, but so frustrating.
It's true. It is that. It's Zen games, basically.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm taking 5-minute chunks of my day and repeating them many, many times.
You have a really good variety in your gameplay.
I try. I think that happens naturally. I'm a little curious about what's going on, I think. Yeah. I hear a lot of things. Yeah. I don't think I ever stopped listening to podcasts after that, like 2008 Renaissance thing. I just sort of, I kept listening. So I listened to all the lists. And what's Waypoint right now is a big one I'm listening to. Anyway.
What games have inspired you?
inspired me.
Yeah, this is one of the, broader questions.
Okay. So, in an open-ended sense, little narrative games, I shouldn't say little in the sense that they're not important, but they're developed by small teams and they're usually shorter. Something like Gone Home. When it came out, there's a time, again, this is like 2010 or 12 or whatever it was. Dear Esther was one of those. These have come to be known as walking simulators. But I love the idea, or loved and still do love the idea of experiencing these worlds as sort of lived in places.
Mm-hmm.
So when the development focuses on creating environmental details and having like things to read, like it's so weird. Maybe it's a voyeuristic thing, right? But you're walking into a life potentially. And specifically, Gone Home is a good example of this, right? That you're coming home, and you, as the character, don't know anything about your family. Of course, because you're new to this like world entirely. But then you get to learn everything. You get to see the way that the like living room is lived in, and all this stuff. I like that a lot.
That's really cool.
Yeah, those games inspire. I think because they show also that it doesn't necessarily have to be about violence, or that there's a variety, that there's potentially a variety at least.
Yeah. That question is mainly to prime you for the next one, because I've been finding that people have trouble with this one.
Okay.
So now you have all of these things circulating in your mind, and my question is, if you could get everyone in the world to play just one game, what would it be?
Interesting. Only one. Everyone in the world to play one game.
Yeah, this is a stumper.
Oh, I might like cop out and pick a game where you could sort of repeat anything. No. The fact that I'm out loud thinking about my strategy for this question is maybe not the best. I don't have a good answer right away. Honestly, okay, because I respect people's time, and I'd want it to be a sort of gateway into more games, then I think I would pick one of the walking simulators. I'm not sure which one, because they're short. They convey something about games as a medium, and the way they can create environments that you can explore, sort of freeform in some sense. And they provide touchstones that aren't necessarily like barriers to entry. So, for example, like if people were to say Braid as a game that everyone should play, it'd be like, what if you don't know how to use a controller? What if you don't know the Mario mechanics that it's subverting, right? Like then that becomes a problem. So or a challenge, I guess, or it takes time for that to work. So if you could pull someone off the street who'd never played a game before, I would probably put something like Gone Home in front of them. Even still, the controls would be a problem probably. There's hardly escaping that, I think. Maybe VR will solve that. I don't know.
It's really cool to hear you talk it through, because you hear all of the media literacy notes and all of your research background and even some VR thinking kind of bleed into how you make that decision. You talk about barriers to entry. I never would have thought of it that way.
Like in terms of, the first thing, well, this is me being like a loudmouth to my family and friends who don't like games. And then eventually when they I've convinced people, and then they sit down and they're like, I couldn't do it. It made me sick. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Please give it another shot. Yeah. I forgot how much a controller is built into my sort of brain, right?
Yeah.
These kinds of things. So yeah, any ways that we can escape that. Oh God, Papers, Please. That's the game. Papers, Please is the game. Do people know what that game is? They must. Papers, Please it's a border crossing simulation in a fictional Eastern Bloc country. Very satirical in terms of the tone and polemical in terms of the tone. It's a totalitarian sort of situation. It teaches you the constraints of sort of having to live within an authoritarian regime. So as the border crossing agent, you have to check people and check their passports and check their stuff to see if they're fit to go through the border. And the rules change every single day, which is part of the cycle of the game. So you have to always be relearning and relearning these things. The reason I picked it, I think, is because everyone sort of understands a mouse, and that's what you use. It's like a desk metaphor.
Right.
So you're in your booth, and people come up, and you just move stuff onto the desk, and it's like pretty intuitive that way. So I feel like, and also it terrified me. Like after about 2 hours, I was like, I can't handle this. It's like felt oppressive in a sense. So I would as an experience where people can get a feel for, what could be singularly a game experience, perhaps. I never want to say that definitively, but yeah.
Right. So where can people find your information? Where can people find what you're researching? Where can people hit you up for questions, comments?
Concerns?
No concerns.
No concerns, please.
I've been very focused on reducing my sort of digital footprint, which makes this like not so easy in some sense. You can find me on the profile sort of page of the Games Institute website. I believe you can find me just through the EW directory, which you can look through. Beyond that, like I'm not on Twitter. I'm not.
You can send general inquiries to the GI. We'll get it to you.
Sure. Yeah. No. Through the GI is probably your best bet if you do want to talk about anything VR related or research related that you heard. I guess I'm happy to.
Yeah, you're gonna get probably inquiries about VR.
Sure. I mean, this is it. I want to see where this whole thing goes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. This has been really, really fun. Thank you.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you for having me.